Hi and welcome. I'm Iris Benrubi, your host on Building Relationships in Isolation. And today I'm really excited to have Siobhan Murphy. Welcome, Siobhan.
Hi, it's so good to be here, Iris. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on because you're talking about how to manage during these challenging times. And one of the, I guess, really interesting concepts that you have is how to go from battlefield to playing field. So let's talk about that. What does that really mean?
Okay, so that's a model of the way we're being. So in coaching, we talk a lot about who you're being while you're doing what you're doing. So in this particular model, there's 4 different, what I call relationship stances that a person can take towards another person or towards another situation. So the first is called drama. It's ordinary human drama. And that's where there's a place of no connection, not much happening, not much movement happening, where people are not their best selves. Okay. And that's often where we are, especially as our basic needs get challenged, right? We drop into drama and that fearful place. So that's one way of operating in a challenge that we're facing or in a relationship. The next level up is a little more cognitive, and it uses the analytical mind a lot. Um, it's it's the box of the mind, if you will. So it's coming together in rational ways to come up with rational solutions that are going to solve a particular problem. So we call that the head, okay, for the left side of the brain.
Yeah, I think you're moving some paper around.
So okay. Yep. So, so the left side of the brain, the analytical side of the brain, we start negotiating and we start coming up with ways of being, well, as it relates to these times, well, I'm going to do this for now and not do anything till later. And then the next level is play, and that's the heart. Okay. And that's how we bring more playfulness into the situation. It's in a whole other realm of being that allows more movement, more connection, more possibility occurs with play. Okay. And then finally, there's the super productive place, which is reverence or light, where we see the whole situation or the other person in relationship with reverence, as if we were revering, in the company of somebody we really held in very high regard. So I'll give you some examples of that. I was working with somebody who had an argument at home. Okay, it was a recurring argument about cleanliness. And what was happening was really they were in drama, at a standstill, nothing happening, no solution yet, just annoyed with each other, angry, in drama, right? So then you can take that same situation and move it up a level to analytical and, start problem solving, right? We could hire a cleaning person. You could clean Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I could clean Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. We could clean, we could let go of our cleaning standards. We could, they come up with problem solving kinds of things. You move into play, it's like Mary Poppins. You put on the music, you decide you're going to do it together. You're going to, give each other a dance around the floor while you're cleaning. It's something much more playful, and it doesn't just solve the problem. It increases connection, possibility, ease, grace, flow. Okay. Finally, if you were at reverence, and I've asked all kinds of groups who they revere, right? Who would they be at their very best behavior on with? So I've heard some people say the Dalai Lama. Some people would say Jesus or Buddha. Some say, young women have told me Brad Pitt. A group of CFOs I worked with told me Warren Buffett, right? But you take the same situation, the same problem, or same challenge, I would prefer to call it, and you ask, how would you be handling this situation if you were negotiating or if you were trying to resolve it with Warren or Brad or Jesus, right? And what often happens is that the problem would disappear if that was if you knew Jesus was coming home, you'd clean your house, right? Like it wouldn't be an issue even. It wouldn't even be a conversation. It would just be done. If you knew that Brad Pitt was coming over, it would be a different kind of conversation, right? So it's how can you bring that kind of reverence to the other people that you're being with? It works in a lot of different scenarios to offer possibilities. Now, sometimes you have to be analytical, and sometimes there's going to be drama, but now you have different possibilities of places you could stand or ways that you could be before you engage in a controversy.
Yeah, I love that it gives people options. I guess my question is, there's a lot of anxiety right now with the uncertain times, not knowing when things are going to come out. Is there going to be a second wave? All the questions, because you hear different things. I mean, I don't listen to the news, but my clients tell me different things that they hear on the news. So in anxiety, I would imagine that it fits into the drama.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of juice in drama. How do people give that up?
How do people
Give that up? The
give
juice.
up the drama,
Yeah.
the juice of the drama?
Mm-hmm.
There's, if we looked at it on a planetary level, a lot of the world lives in drama, right? They live in the battlefield. The battlefield is drama and the analytical. That they're fighting what is, okay? So we're not going to get everybody out of that. All we need is a few souls to start moving up the chain for there to be a shift in our consciousness. So the juice, you have to say to people, what's the payoff you're getting from that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you consider the first two stages that you talked about, the drama and the headiness being in your mind, would you consider those more the battlefield? And once you move into play and reverence, those are the playing field?
Exactly. Another way to think about it, if we were thinking about it in terms of like athletics, the people in drama would be the critics, right? The people at the head stage would be the spectators watching. The players would be playing, right? And the champions would be in that high, rarefied air where they're so connected, they're so in flow, they're so together that they can perform at higher levels.
Yeah, so it's an invitation for us to either get on the field and play or even become one of the champions in our own life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what have you seen when you've you coach people? So what have you seen in terms of shifting from where they started off to where the possibility of, what's possible to become?
I have an example where just having the conversation about the model shifted something for someone. This woman was negotiating with a business partner, and they noticed that they tended to always be in drama. And the person just said, I'd like to have a different kind of conversation. Would you like to join me in another approach? And what would it be like if we tried this approach? And they had a whole deeper, different kind of conversation as a result of that acknowledged the places they had been in drama, and each person was able to acknowledge their part in it.
Yeah, so it's about an invitation to create something else and to step out of what you already know. It's like asking a fish, what's it like to swim in water? Have another context.
Mm-hmm.
So it's asking that person if they'd be willing to step out of the water and see what else that they can co-create with you.
Right. And many times people can, because if, for example, if I ask somebody to act, I'm going to pay you $10,000 to act very dramatic, you likely could do it, right? And so if I asked you to act more playfully, you could at least try that on.
For
right?
$10,000, most people
Yes. Yeah, so what that means is people have some more mental flexibility than they admit sometimes to be able to change their frame.
Yeah, and the thing that I hear in what you've just said is also the motivation. Money is often a motivator, but it can't all be about money. So it's about looking for what is the payoff for me if I choose to shift into play or reverence. Would that be correct?
Yes. Yeah, and some of that payoff is greater possibilities, better solutions, more productivity, deeper connection.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that happen for people when they move into that space.
And what I love about what you've shared, this applies to you whether you're in the business world, in corporation, with your colleagues, or whether you're at home with family, friends, your partner, your best friend, your neighbor. This applies everywhere in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my next question to you is, you have a special way to share an appreciation. Could you share that with us?
Oh, okay. So, we were both at that conference with Harville Hendricks, and I know you interviewed Harville and Helen last week. So that's one particular way of doing an appreciation. The way I do it was learned from them, and it's 3 I appreciate yous mirrored, and 3 I appreciate me's mirrored. So it might sound something like this. I appreciate, Iris, how you and your team set up this interview and made me feel comfortable the whole way through about what was going to happen and what I needed to do to prepare. And then you would mirror that.
So I am reflecting back to you. One of the things that you appreciate about me is the way me, my team made you feel comfortable and knowing what you can expect every step of the way.
Right.
Okay.
And then I would continue and do 2 more. And then I would do some appreciations of myself.
Oh, don't stop. Keep going.
Oh, it feels good, huh? Yeah.
We're never, I think the whole world is short of appreciation. Everyone
Yes.
could use more appreciation. So, sorry, I cut you off. So you do 2 more appreciation of the person in front of you.
Right.
Reflect back what they heard. And then?
Right. Then you do 3 appreciations of yourself in the relationship. Okay. So that might sound something like, I appreciate myself for reviewing the questions and really thinking about what I would want to share with the audience.
And then I would reflect that back to you?
Yes. And then we switch. And it's a brilliant way to bring that much needed appreciation or acknowledgement to a relationship. It's a way I have actually completed some coaching relationships. It's a very nice completion exercise at the very end of an engagement. It presumes that there's some connection and some history with the person. So
yeah, I was going to say, I think one of my favorite parts about how you use appreciation is that, especially for women and for men as well, but my experience is for women especially, it's easier for us to appreciate someone else and harder for us to appreciate ourselves. Right. And this allows us both to step back and really become conscious of who we are and how we show up and own that, and then turn it around and then feed it back about what I appreciate about myself.
Mm-hmm. And what I found also is that you learn things when the other person's appreciating themselves. You learn about either what was challenging or what they put effort into or what they want to be acknowledged for. From their own acknowledgement. So it's another way of learning about the person in a deeper way.
Yeah, and I'm going to add, that just triggered something for me in that when you appreciated how I and the team did things, was like, oh, I never stopped to think about it. It's actually something we do well. And it's a way for me to get something outside of myself, check in to see, does it resonate? And it's like, wow, that's true. I'm going to take that in. We do that well. So it's a way to get in information that sometimes we're not even aware of what we're doing.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. So Bernadette said possibly someone close. So I would imagine if you're asking about that, so I'm going to get you, Siobhan, to answer that. You can use that with somebody close to you.
Let's see, close, but maybe best to pick your battle. Oh, okay. Is that about the battle to play?
There's too much background. There's a lot of movement in the background. Say that again.
I said, is that about the battle to play model or the appreciation exercise? I'm trying to understand the question.
I'm not sure, Bernadette. Just post again and we'll come back to your question.
Okay.
It's interesting because I think that she's bringing in both concepts, right? About, appreciating someone and that battleground potentially. I'm going to go on a limb here before she answers it, and to say that with someone who you've had some power struggles with, to be able to use some of this appreciation and pick your battles. Does that fit into what you're teaching, Siobhan?
Yes, and I see that she's asking about both. So
Both.
the closer the person is, the more likely you're going to be able to have several things to appreciate them for. And it's a ritual that you might want to practice over time, do every once in a while, not just once. So yeah, it helps with someone close. In terms of picking your battles, you don't want to come in all reverent and spiritual and playful if somebody's got a gun, right? Or somebody is clearly not a safe person for you. So there is a sense of picking your battle in that regard. You want to, there's a time for battle and there's a time for analytical mind, but you want to be sure that the person can actually rise to the occasion with you.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because if you're dealing with someone who's abusive, what would you say is your stance? Obviously, it's much harder to be in play in reverence, depending on, I don't want to say what your tolerance level is, but more what the risk is. So how would you coach someone into what is their stance when they're dealing with someone who's nasty, mean, and diminishing? Where would they stand?
Well, I might coach them through the 4 stances anyway to see, let's try those on as stances to see what's revealed. Because it may be that this situation is calling forth the person to grow, to be able to set boundaries, to leave, to, in some other way end the relationship or transform the relationship. So that might come out in the reverence conversation, that this situation is actually calling the person to a higher level. Okay? So we play with all 4 and then decide which makes the most sense to use going forward.
Yeah, and what I heard in that conversation, what you just shared with us, is that when we're in reverence, it has us step out of kind of reactivity and be fully present. And what I heard is then we get access to what's really needed in that moment. So we're actually connecting to our inner wisdom. Would you say that that's in alignment with what you teach?
Yes, very much so.
All right, so if you have questions, post at the bottom, but I've got one more question for you. You have a special question that shifts everything, so let's hear it.
Okay, so everything that I'm sharing I got from other people. So I learned a lot and I'm good at integrating that and spitting it back out. So so the Battle to Play model came from a coach named Martin Sage, and the appreciation came from Harville and Helen. And this particular question came from a coach who's no longer on the planet, and his name is Kurt Wright. And the question is, what's the best thing that's happened to you lately? It is one of those questions that Google can't answer. So it is one designed to engage the intuitive mind. And I'll tell you a story about a woman who asked this with her daughter. They started to play a game, and the daughter was a teenager. And the teenager was like teenagers are. They weren't connecting that much, but they started to play this game of what's the best thing that happened to you today? And each day they would each share the best thing. And what started to happen was you become trained to look for the best things that are happening, going on in your life. So one morning the girl runs downstairs and says to her mother, I know what the best thing that happened to me today is. She's like, it's morning. How do you know? She goes, I woke up thinking, what's the best thing that's going to happen to me today? So there was a shift in her whole approach to seeking value in her experience throughout her day. And that's, I think, something that could be used during these hard times to help people move into a new way of relating to the situation.
Yeah, because it's so easy to look at all the ways in which we've been limited, restricted,
Mm.
don't know, can't predict the future. And those things tend to have a stranglehold on us if we hang on to them. And your invitation to us is, how do you step out of that and start to be grateful? What is the best thing that happened to you? And I think not only does it help shift your mindset, what I'm also hearing is you get to create intimacy.
Mm.
You get to share what's really at the core. That mother, when she heard her daughter share that, it was like, wow, I'm really getting to know my daughter. The teenagers, that didn't want to talk to me, always had a wall or a quick answer. I really got to know who she is at her heart and her core.
Yeah, beautiful. I want to offer another one that brings you into the day.
Oh, there's one. Yes.
Yeah, and this is from a friend of mine, Chris Chalk, and she has a practice of looking for beauty every day. And we played this game, taking a picture of beauty and texting it to one another. And the beautiful, if you pardon the pun here, beautiful thing about that exercise is it forces you into the present, because beauty is in the now moment. And there are so many moments of beauty, even in this hard time, that we want to be sure we're present to the good that's there too. There's a temptation to sort of blanket everything with a dark brush right now. And there are really a lot of beautiful things happening.
Yeah, and I noticed myself doing that, in that when I'd go for a walk in the forest down here, I would look and I'd take a picture of the raindrops on a small leaf, or I'd look really closely at a flower who was only about this big. But if I looked close enough, there was an even smaller black star, and looking at the beauty of that, things that I normally didn't stop to see. And through that exercise, it actually trains you to stop and see what is beautiful out there.
Mm-hmm.
And now with COVID, probably we have a whole lot more time. I know I can't run out of the house and do all the things that I used to. And so it's an opportunity to grow your presence, your mindfulness, your where you're going to focus on and what it'll create. Let me ask you, Siobhan, what have you noticed with your clients when you can get them to focus on beauty or focus on what's the best thing that's happened to you today? What have you noticed with your clients?
Well, I noticed that the pace of the conversation slows down, the tenor of the voice changes. Um, Sometimes people have to pause and think about the question. Um, that people are racing around a lot right now. If you are working, it's very busy time. Um, so it forces people to slow down and think, which is what I want to have happen in a coaching session anyway. That slowing down to really reflect and be able to pick out something from the intuitive side of the mind to help.
Because what jumps out at me is often when I'm working with clients, I'll say, "How are you?" And they'll go, "Fine." And then, but we know that that's just the social answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say, "Okay, now we got the social answer out of the way. Now what's really going on with you?"
Mm-hmm.
Which is what you're asking your coachees to do, is to slow down and drop in and what's really there, rather than that
Mm-hmm.
quick, "Oh yeah, everything's fine," you know, could be worse, or just like the typical answers that you get socially.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
We've got a question here. Bill asked that I'd like you to coach him on. If my clients don't use their laptop camera, how do we do and we do, how do I suggest this without making the customer feel uncomfortable?
Hi, Bill. Good to see you. I'm assuming you mean the appreciation exercise or the battle to play. When you refer to how do we do this, I'm not clear what this is.
So you're asking, Bill, how if clients don't use their laptop, let's say in a Zoom call, when you're working with client one-on-one, how do we suggest them to get on the camera without making them feel uncomfortable? Here he said meetings. Yes. So if clients
Oh,
don't like to use their camera in meetings and they would rather go incognito, and I
oh,
either a black screen or just a still photo, how do you invite them into opening their camera without making them uncomfortable?
mm. Okay, that's an interesting one. I just taught a class recently, and we made it just mandatory. If you wanted to get credit for the class, you had to show your face. You can invite people to be in a quiet environment and say, we would love to really get to know you better. It's really an invitation, Bill. I don't think you can make them. And I'm not sure we can make them feel less uncomfortable, but we could certainly invite people to share themselves.
You know, when
Do
I
you
read,
have some thoughts on that, Iris?
yeah, when I read that, my first thought was like, you could use the four stances. If you could be on camera and be dramatic, what would it be like? Okay, now turn it off. If you could turn on your camera and you could be playful, what would that be like? If you could be in your head, you know, to just, that whole thing for me just sounds playful. It's not so, you got to be on so I can read your facial expressions so that, you know, whatever's going on for the person at the other end. What do you think, Siobhan?
Well, I like the playful idea, and we had an experience where we had funny hat day on a Zoom call recently, and everyone had to wear a funny hat, and it kind of dissolved some of that stiffness that people might feel. Yeah.
I would even mess with that. What if you could wear a mask and just be on camera, right? Or what if you just thought like all this playfulness, or even ask the client, what would make this really fun for you? If you could, I don't know, put a cup of water in front of your face when you're talking to me. Like when you start to get really silly and get giggly, it's like, okay, maybe it's not as a big of a deal. Does that help, Bill? He said hats. All right. So I think, oh, we've got one more comment. He said, I'll think harder. All right, great. So Siobhan, if people want to learn more about you, where can they reach you?
My website is thequestconnection.com. That's QUEST connection.com. And my email is Siobhan@thequestconnection.com.
And let's spell that out. S-I-O.
Yes, it's SIOBHAN. If you prefer, you can use info@thequestconnection.com. That'll make it a little easier.
Now, is it the Quest, T-H-E?
Yes, THEQUEST connection.com.
And when we edit this, we'll put it down at the bottom of the video. And we have a few more messages. Thanks. So my last question to you is, if there was one thing you would hope our viewers take away from today's call, what would that be?
We didn't even get to that yet.
Okay.
What I want people to know is that we're living in this transformational time. And when we say, you know, there's so much uncertainty, there was always uncertainty. Nobody knew the future, really. But we were born for this time. There is a reason that we're here. We've called this situation to us for a transformation of the major systems of the planet that have not been working for everyone. And I was trying to think of the battle to play model in terms of this. If I was looking at COVID-19, the economy, the race relations in the United States, if I was looking at all of that from a reverent standpoint, from the farthest point back I could look, I would have to say we're being called into something much greater than we've been. And to that extent, to the extent that we can embody that, answer that call, we're going to have a better time of this. So the natural human tendencies to feel afraid and to be uncertain, we're going to be in uncertainty. We're going to have to embrace it. But if we can shift our frame of reference to we're part of the most exciting transformation in human history, we get front row seats and we get vibrational votes. We get to participate and actively share our gifts and talents to create something new in the world that didn't exist before in every system of human endeavor, in business, in medicine, in education, in government, in spirituality. All of these organizations are being challenged to come up with new ways of connecting, new ways of ordering themselves. Law enforcement is another area that's being called into its next highest expression. There's a quote I love that says, if you can't see the inherent perfection in the situation, you're standing too close to the picture. So if we take a really long view of this, I invite people into the idea that we call this to us, it's for a wonderful purpose, and we get to be a part of it, and we can choose to contribute to it. And the more we stay in our heart and our playfulness, the better time we'll have making that contribution.
Yeah, and Bernadette put in the chat, no more passing the buck. And what that brings up for me is many of us have been lulled into a go with the flow, wherever life takes us, whatever the big corporations do. And a lot of what's happened in the last, I would say, even month, if not 3 months, is really brought up to the surface of things that aren't working so well. And we have an opportunity to actually take a stance, be proactive, is what I'm hearing you say, Siobhan, and really make a difference in the world to create the kind of world that we want, even though we may have no idea what that is right now, because it's outside of the realm of what we've created until now.
Exactly. We're not going to know what it is yet. But I'm listening to Jean Houston, who I love, and she talks about each of us having a blueprint encoded with what we were meant to do, that each of us has a part to play, a role in this situation. So we can really try to tune into that.
And that's what I'm hearing your parting words are for our viewers, to really awaken to your own blueprint and what's possible and your contribution that you were brought into this world for. And with that, Siobhan, I want to say thank you for your contribution, your time, your energy, the strategies that you've shared, and for the difference you make in the world.
Thank you, Iris, and the same to you.
Thanks
to all who attended. Are there any other questions we need to answer, or we're all good?
Answered, yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.